Hey everyone, we are very excited today on our episode of Meta Talks. This is a very special episode because we have the amazing and incredible Cathy Hackl, who is the godmother of the metaverse and author of Navigating the Metaverse. Welcome, Cathy.
Excited to be here.
Well, Kathy, we're honored for you to be here. Um, I'm curious, what was your journey like to get where you are?
Oh my goodness. So I've been in metaverse related industries for almost a decade now, right? So it's been quite a journey. I would say, I got to trace it way back. I've got to take you guys way back. So like 2004, I was working at CNN, and part of my job there was to look at all the raw footage that was coming in from the war in Iraq, right? So like horrible. Sometimes I had to. Not everything was horrible, right? But I had to sit through some horrible things. So I always joke that I was a Facebook moderator or YouTube moderator before that existed. um, yeah, right. But when you have that type of job, you have to kind of dial your humanity switch to just a little bit, just to kind of try to get by. And it wasn't until it's almost 10 years ago that I went to an event. I put on a VR headset. I went into an experience called Confinement by The Guardian that put me in a virtual reality solitary confinement cell. And the only way I can describe it, Daniel and Kate, is like I felt like that dial that I had to move turned fully back on. And I said, I took the headset off. I said, wow, this is the future of storytelling or business or something. And this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. So my first steps were in the VR world, then went over to Magic Leap, worked in spatial computing, AR, whatever term you want to use. Then went over to Amazon Web Services, where worked on many projects, including large-scale gaming simulations, and then eventually launched off on my own. And my company, Futures Intelligence Group, was acquired by Journey in 10 months. Like it was, I found like I really launched it and sold it in 10 months, and now I'm part of Journey. So it's been quite a journey.
I'm curious that moment when the light bulb, like, this is what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. What is it, your experience at that moment?
It was a moment of clarity. I think of clarity, of seeing the future in front of me. I usually say something like, I recognized a rocket when I saw one, and I said, I'm getting on this rocket. And I feel that that's what a lot of people right now are feeling when it comes to metaverse and Web3. It's like they see the rocket or the high-speed train, right? And they're like, I'm getting on this high-speed train right now because I understand where it's going. I mean, we might not know, right, where we're actually heading, but we recognize that something of a seismic shift is happening, right? And there's kind of that moment where we're all like, okay, we want to be part of this. So yeah, that was a very big, clear moment. It was clarity for me, and just the vision of understanding I'm playing the long game, right? This is not a short-term thing. I'm moving forward. So
Wow, and that was 10 years ago. Pretty
yeah.
amazing. And Kathy, what responsibility do you feel as the godmother of the metaverse? I could just imagine the weight on your shoulder.
So I'll tell you something. So the name actually was given to me by Andrew Schwartz, who works at Nike's Metaverse team. So for whatever that's worth, it was Alexis Ohanian had tweeted asking for more like women in Web3 and Metaverse to follow, and Andrew it was included a few names, and then he did one last tweet and said, oh, and by the way, don't forget Cathy Hackl, comma, she's the godmother of the metaverse. So then someone took a screenshot, sent it to me. The community started using it. So I wear it as a badge of honor, to be honest. To me, it's a badge of honor for all the work that I've done. I mean, there's many other people that have been in the space for a long time as well. But I am very publicly out there. I want to, I wouldn't say there's too many women yet that are very publicly facing. There are some definitely. But it's been mostly men that are very public facing in metaverse. And I'm very proud to be one of the women, especially being a woman, being Latina, like being out there very publicly, representing a different face of technology. Right. So there is that sense of responsibility that I have. And for me, my responsibility is towards people seeing a different face of technology, and more women, more BIPOC people seeing that this future is for them. This future includes them. We need everyone to build it, not just one specific type of demographic. So I do feel a sense of responsibility. One of the big missions that I have, Kate, and specifically when it comes to this, is I want more women, more young women, more girls to see someone different leading, right? And also because I am so public facing, I will have my haters and I will have those attacks. I call them virtual bullets for lack of a better term. But if I have to take those virtual bullets right now so that the women and girls that come behind me can feel more empowered to be vocal about what they're building, what they're doing, then I will gladly take them, because I want more people to feel empowered, that they can be on a stage, that they can be writing a book, that they know what they're talking about. Like, this is important to me. So yeah, that I do have a sense of responsibility. It's not just fun and games.
Yeah. I learned this yesterday from a call with Winnie, a friend of mine, and she said, we have to embrace the negative comments, because that means people are listening to us. It's like, I love how she framed it. So I have to give her credit for that. Now, Cathy, what advice would you give for brands that still super hesitant to enter the metaverse?
I mean, every brand is going to approach it differently, right? I don't think it's crawl, walk, run, right? For the brands, don't feel pressured, right? But don't rest on your laurels either. Like, understand that maybe you should start doing some level of experimentation. Not everything that you do has to be super public, right? So you can test and learn in private. There are ways to do that where it's not a huge marketing activation because your marketing team wants to be the first to do X in the metaverse, right? Granted, we're building the metaverse. It's not here yet, right? But everyone wants to put that stake down in the ground, right? So
it seems like every brand's doing it. They're just doing it for the heck of it. Like, let's put the flag out there.
Let's put it down. Yeah. For some brands, that's not how they operate. They're not that, there's an element of risk. But there are ways to test and learn now in private in many different ways, right? So, so my advice is, learn as much as you can, educate yourself. Don't get wrapped up in the hype, right? Work with people that truly can help guide you as Sherpas. Right now, what most of these brands need are Sherpas, like people that are going to guide them and help them. And if you are a brand that is in the space, I hope you have a clear strategy. I hope that you know what you're building towards, with some level of flexibility built into it, just because the industry so changes so much and so volatile. But yeah, that's what I would say is, there are ways to start preparing without having to be super public.
Yeah. And how do you define success entering the metaverse? Is there any KPI that you can think of, like you look for? I mean, it's so new.
It's so new. I mean, the KPIs change, and I think that that's hard for brands that are used to the Web 2, like how many retweets, how many followers did the influencer that we hired have, like stuff like that. Like, how many, it's different. Like, for example, when you have, let's say, an experience in Roblox, like your metrics are going to be different. It's more like, dwell time and engagement. How much time do people spend inside your experience? Did they come back? Like, there's things that are going to be measured that are different, right? So it's almost like marketing in itself, from a marketing function, needs to change a little bit. Another important thing is that you're moving away from that Web 2 model, which is the brand speaking to its audience, to the brand being here with the audience, right? The conversation you have on Discord is very different. If you have an NFT community, these things are very different. You're creating and collaborating. So for some brands, that's pretty scary, right? They're used to be, they're very, used to being the broadcaster, like, having the, just kind of communicating from top down. So that's one of the things. And you even see it sometimes with some brands that approach the gaming space, where it'll be brand driven, right? And they don't even think of the player. And I'm like, if you're entering the space, it has to be player driven. It has to be fun. I mean, yeah, observe all your brand guidelines and use all your brand colors and your brand assets and everything. But if that is what's leading that gaming experience, there's no incentive there for the players, right? And I do see that sometimes happening. So yeah, especially if you're doing it in the gaming space, player first, not brand driven.
Yeah, I'm fascinated. That was like end of last year when Gucci launched their Gucci Garden, and I was able to interview the designer, Brooke, and so super creative. Now, all of a sudden, the kids were like, "Mom, I want you to buy the $750 Gucci belt." It's like, what the heck? Even my son, 16 years old, is like, recognize it. Like, man, what a smart activation. Like, their future customers, they're slowly, having them everywhere, right?
Yeah, it's creating that brand awareness, that brand affinity, and if they're not able to afford it right now, they will later on, right? So they see Gucci as this aspirational brand, or they might be able to wear it on their avatar. And then they're like, well, when I'm older, I'm going to have the Gucci, whatever, right? So yeah, definitely really interesting way. I mean, I love what they've done. Gucci's one of those brands that has been killing it. They're all in. I mean, they have a whole gaming department. I love that they moved from just an activation and doing these sorts of things to having more of a permanent presence in Roblox with Gucci Town. And I think some brands are moving towards having those permanent experiences, right? It's not just a one-off. So,
yeah. Kathy, I'm curious, what is the common misconception of the metaverse? I know you get asked this a lot.
Yeah, I think there's still a lot of misconception when it comes to what, is it VR, right? Is it Ready Player One, the Oasis? I'm like, I hope not. I was actually at a conference yesterday, and one guy said, very smart person on stage, he was like, well, maybe it will probably look like the Oasis in Ready Player One. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's like the most dystopic vision. Graphics wise, yeah, I mean, I do want those graphics, but I'm like, that's a pretty dystopic view of what the metaverse could be. So the metaverse is not only VR, the metaverse is enabled by many different technologies that include both VR, AR, edge computing, cloud computing, like many different technologies. So that's one misconception. Another misconception is that it's only virtual spaces. It will also include the physical world that just hasn't been fully enabled. And, the biggest one also is, there is a bit of pollution, let's say around the term metaverse. After Facebook changed their name to Meta, that did introduce a term to millions of people before I ever thought it was going to happen. But it did create some pollution around, and what is this? Some people will be like, oh, that's Facebook. And it's like, no, the metaverse is a broader vision, successor state to today's mobile internet. Will we use the term metaverse in 10 years? I don't think so. I mean, who knows? Right. But yeah, I mean, if we don't use it in 10 years, then that means we arrived, right, in some ways. So, but yeah, I think those would be some of the misconceptions I would see.
Yeah, I get a chance to onboard and tell entrepreneurs YPO, and the way how I explain it, it's like a planet is the metaverse, and then blockchain is what technologies we utilize, and then there's NFT, XR, VR, and virtual worlds, and that's to simplify it because some people think like it's crypto and it's scammy. Like we stay away from that. Like it's the whole planet.
Yeah, it's many enabling technologies. Like it's just so many different technologies. It's not just what I said. It's not one company can build it, and it's not one single technology. It's many different companies building this, just like the internet. I think there's not one single, right? There's tech giants, right? But yeah, I would say it's a lot of enabling technologies, and sometimes we get fixated on what's sexy, right? So for example, at the conference I was yesterday, it was interesting because I did not hear anyone on stage talk about like edge computing, cloud computing. And I know those are not sexy terms, but in order for us to truly have that metaverse that we envision, we're hyper focused on hardware, on content. I'm like, well, what about the rails? And for you to have large scale gaming simulations, like you're talking about millions, or billions of people with glasses having to consume digital content, in their location, like on the edge. So it was really interesting. And, sometimes those topics can be a little boring, but I think that they're essential for us to understand, like, how do we truly enable this? But yeah, normally it's like, oh, metaverse, crypto. I'm like, well, blockchain and NFTs are a component. They're not the only thing. And then that's the thing, like, is the metaverse, do you need Web3 for the metaverse? You need Web3 for the metaverse if you're building towards an open, decentralized metaverse, which is what a lot of us want to see, right? But does it have to be open does it have to have Web3? If it is open and decentralized, yes, right? But I have a feeling that potentially we'll have a large part that will be open and decentralized, but there will still be some walled gardens, whether it's because they're company driven or because it's something related to security or intelligence, or there will be settings where those parts of the metaverse cannot be open, right? Yeah. There are, medical data, like there's just certain things that will remain closed because there is a need for them to remain closed.
Absolutely. Dan?
Yeah. So Kathy, something I'm really passionate is mental health.
Yeah.
And I was listening this morning to Deepak Chopra talk about how they created AI bots to help people basically that are on the verge of suicide. And they've helped like thousands of people save their lives And I was really blown away by that. So where do you see, some of these big positive changes with the metaverse in the future?
Yeah, and I have a virtual Deepak on my phone that says the AI deep. He meditates with me. Of course, it's not. It's a virtual Deepak because Deepak would be really expensive to have him one on one. But I think that there are uses of this technology that allow us to have a more human centered experience around artificial intelligence, right? And there are some positives, like you mentioned, specifically that finding someone that you can talk to, that you might feel comfortable opening up, that might help you kind of not feel as lonely. I'll give you an example. When I was at Magic Leap, we had a virtual human called Micah. And, the approach for Magic Leap at that time was very human-centered artificial intelligence. And, people would put the glasses on, which are like, you see them right here, the glasses that are behind me, that's Magic Leap, right? So you would put those on. And then in front of you, you were sitting at a table. In front of you, across from you was Micah. And she's a virtual human. You could only see her through the glasses. And very, very friendly, like not anything that would scare you. And it was interesting because she didn't speak at that time, but if she smiled, people would smile back at her, which is a very human reaction. Sometimes someone, like, she yawned and like someone yawned. Like, there was this engagement with AI and with technology that was completely different from anything I had ever seen. And it made me think about, wow, these virtual beings, whether it's a bot or whether it is more of that representation, could truly be positive, right, for us. So Daniel, to that point, I think about the longer term, right? How does this start to impact society? So one of the things that I've been thinking about is, like, if once we're going further into space, right? We're going further into exploring space, going back to the moon, we're potentially going to go to Mars. Once we start going to the moon and to Mars, especially, these are like long space travel moments. And there will be crews on these ships, but these virtual beings might serve as companions, as helpers, as companions on a psychological standpoint for some of these people on these, on these like long-term space journeys. So I think that there is a lot of things that start here on Earth, go into space, on how we're going to be able to use these technologies from a human-centered way. That being said, there are negatives to the flip side, right? Which is, deep fakes that, alter someone's perception of history, or that use someone's image to say something they didn't say. And then if you go even further down the rabbit hole, it's the idea and the concept of unattainable beauty, right? That has an impact on our mental health. The Web 2 world of Instagram and all these sorts of things has impacted young men and women, in a bigger percentage women, girls, right? But also boys, on what the standard of beauty is, right? And if we go further into virtualization, like, that's truly unattainable. Like, you can't go to a plastic surgeon and say, I want to look like a Kardashian, but I want to look like my avatar. Whoa, that's totally unattainable. So there is that balance in those conversations, and I think we need to have right now as to what is the positive side, what could go wrong, right? We need to have those very uncomfortable conversations right now. So I'm glad you're interested in the mental health side, because it's something that I definitely think through.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we've been actually talking about that. If I have virtual friends I like better than my actual real life friends, I might never have real life friends or spouse or relationships, right? Like, it could be in our mind, how do we separate, what's better and what's not, what's real? But back to you, Kate.
Yeah. But hold on, I will say something really interesting. At Magic Leap, they had this experience also with the glasses, where they would work with people on the autism spectrum, right, to help them prepare for interviews. So they had a virtual being that would conduct the interview, and they would get cues and help on trying to, like, practice for interviews. So in that flip side, there is also that positive aspect of how do you help someone that can have some type of social inability use these technologies, right? So yeah, it's always like the good, like the dark, black and the dark mirror and the white mirror.
Yeah, I actually have that experience firsthand. I hosted a happy hour with the parents, and the kid was so excited taking over the mom's computer because he wants to party in the virtual world. So, and she was fascinated by it. But again, the good side of it, right? Kathy, how far along are we before all these worlds can communicate it to each other? Because right now it's one's building the other. Are we 10 years out, 6 years? What do you think?
I can't give you an answer to that. I think interoperability is hard to solve. Yeah. I mean, whoever comes and says, like, I've heard people at conferences say, like, we solved the interoperability problem. Like, no, you didn't. If you had really solved that, everything would be interoperable and talking to each other. So I don't have a time or date. I know there's brilliant people working on interoperability. I don't know. I don't know when we get there, right? I'm not sure. I think that'll be up to some of those people that are really working on creating that. I do think, blockchain technology is probably an important part of that.
Yeah. And with that, my other question is, it's fascinating. I have a teenager son who's really head on Roblox, and he said has a personal brand, which is kind of fascinating. He said, Mom, I want to build my personal brand, and it's fascinating. So I asked him a question like, hey, what do you think of blockchain and NFT and all this? Like, what are your friends are saying? It's like, no, we don't want to get involved with that because that's really weird and scammy. And it's like, no, that's not. Like, why can't you just be open? But it's fascinating how the gamers, they're so ahead of technology, and a lot of brands has to keep up with the technology. It's so immersive and beautiful, right? But then they don't want to, they're not open to the other world out there.
Well, it's really interesting because, you have Minecraft coming out talking about NFTs, how NFTs are not part of their roadmap. I thought that was a really important message and interesting from that gaming perspective, right? Because some of the gaming platforms are going further Web3, some are distancing themselves. Like, which one wins? I think there's going to be room for everything. Yeah. Like, to be honest, I think there's going to be room for everything. There's going to be different audiences. There's different reasons that Web3 will be used. So yeah, I think it'll be interesting. I will make a comment about your son talking about his personal brand, which has nothing to do with the metaverse, but I think is very relevant with Gen Z and Gen Alpha, right? Is they're coming into the workforce with built-in audiences because that's how they grew up. And corporate America themselves has absolutely no idea what to do with personal brand. Having been in corporate America, like, we don't know what to do with you. You're doing all these things. I'm like, well, I'm speaking for my personal brand. So the more and more these kids come with built-in audiences, right? So yeah, that's a whole other. I should write an article about that. But
yeah, it's fascinating because I coached him. I said, like, hey, Mom, I'm number 2 player in these things and have this community. Okay, so I said, you're under someone else's world. You got to build your own. So like, oh, is that how it works? This is 16-year-old. It said, like, I really want to be a leader because he's dominating his space. He said, like, how do you build your personal brand? And he said, well, most of the leaders in that gaming, they're kind of an asshole. I said, look, his name is Luke. Don't be that because that's not sustainable. If you want to be a leader, but it's like their model is something different.
Yeah. And you see, for example, when Technoblade, the Minecraft player, died, and I wrote about this on LinkedIn, I had my son come in. He knocked on my door. He was really sad. He said, Mommy, this player that I really like called Technoblade passed away. He went back to his computer, created this like memorial for Technoblade and Roblox. And at that moment, I was like, wow, he found a way to use this technology to express his feelings in a way that were safe for him, that allowed him to really use his creativity to express something that was hard for him, right? And that was a moment where I don't know, it's just a beautiful moment for me to understand that it's not technology for the sake of technology, but it's also technology that will allow these children who are born with this, right, to express their feelings. So from a mental health perspective, it helped him cope with the death of, someone he doesn't really know, but that passed away. And I've shared it on LinkedIn, got tons of comments, tons of families saying I had the same experience. So I think that there is something beautiful there, right, when it comes to how they're using these technologies also to cope with things that are hard for them to understand. So anyway, we went off on a tangent, but I think it's still very valid and beautiful. So.
Yeah, it's like, especially as parents, it's a struggle taking our kids off gaming. And what I've noticed from my own personal experience, if I would call my son, I will get hello and how are you, bye, right? Play. Then I started asking questions like, hey, how do you do Discord? And then we have this 45 minutes conversation because I'm willing to meet halfway. Yeah. So I'm trying to be engaging in his world. Then we have a better relationship and more spending time. So I think a lot of us parents are like struggling with this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it's simple as what you're doing, Kate. Like sitting down with your kid and playing Fortnite or Roblox. It sounds so silly, but as simple as that starts to create that connection, right? One of the things that I'm really big into is thinking of my kids, and I say in the metaverse we are all world builders, and now is our time to build. Is that we shouldn't only have kids focus on game time. I split game time and build time, right? So if they're going to have 2 hours of game time, then you need to give me 30 minutes here of build time. Go continue building your experience, right? So I think that there is something there that maybe parents can start to balance. It's not just the gaming part, but also like give them the tools to build things, and it'll be a different experience, right, with the technology. So yeah, but it's an exciting time, I think, for parents. I will share something funny that did happen is, so I have Roblox on my phone, and usually it's my daughter that plays there. And my son grabbed the phone and started playing, and changed her avatar. And when she came back, grabbed my phone, she was playing Roblox. She was so livid, mad because her brother had changed her avatar. And I literally had to push back and say, an avatar is a very personal thing. You should not change her avatar. You did not have her permission to change her avatar. And I mean, they went back and made it back into what she looked like, or just she expressed herself. But it was really interesting because it was such a private, personal thing.
Yes, I remember when my son were crying because someone stole whatever he collected. It's like, okay, you got to be tough on this. I said, you only cry when someone died, not someone stole your things. I didn't realize it was so personal. So I'm going to be mindful how they feel. But Kathy, I was so fascinated. This was like 7 years ago. And my son was like, Mom, do you know that I have a store in Roblox? I said, really? And then realized, because I started e-commerce, I was doing that. Said that they said my store is beautiful. I have all this kind of merchandise and it's clean. And said, what are you doing now? So like, I'm cleaning, someone fell in the milk. It's like, why do you have to clean? So like, I'm trying to save payroll. So I don't really know what's wrong with business. It's like,
it's fantastic.
It totally changed my mind about what he's putting his time into. And so that totally changed. But Kathy, I'm kind of curious, you're like the influencers to a lot of us, right? Getting into this space. I'm curious, who's your mentor and how do you stay up to the latest technology?
Who's my mentor? I think the CEO of the new company I'm a part of has become a bit of a mentor, Andy Zimmerman. I mean, he comes from being the CEO at Frog Design. He set up Accenture Mobility. Like, he's just a fantastic leader. So I'm learning a lot from him. And I would also say, lots of women and allies that have, come through my life, I've learned from. Sandy Carter, who's now at Unstoppable Domains, and we worked together at Amazon, had a saying. It was like, if you can see it, you can be it. And that's something that I do live by. If you can see it, you can be it. So if you can see more women like you and me and different folks, like, people can be like, okay, I can be that person. I can be a leader. I can be a part of this industry. So yeah, I mean, I think some of those things, the biggest thing I would say that one of the biggest influences was that my parents raised me as an equal. I have a brother. They never made a big deal about us being boy and girl. Like, we were raised as an equal, like, go and conquer the world. And I think that that's something that for me really helped me kind of know, like, just keep moving, so.
Yeah. Then as we are heading towards this Gen Z and storytelling, where Gen Z don't want to be identified with gender, right? So that's going to blow our mind as brands, as company. How are you going to storytell that way? That's 25% of them don't want to be identified as female or male. So as we're heading into the 3D metaverse, that's going to be a lot of work. So that's going to change the model of company, how we sell, logistics, and everything.
Yeah, I mean, it's about identity. It'd be more fluid with identity, right? We're starting to see that. So I'm starting to do a lot of work around Gen Alpha, right? And I hate like broad demographic categories, because like, can you really put everyone in one category? Not really. But I'm really looking at Gen Alpha because that's what I have at home mostly. Is truly trying to understand what they like, how they like to, what drives them, right? So yeah, really trying to focus on what I call Gen Alpha's reality, which is that blurry edge between physical and virtual doesn't exist much. So
yeah. Well, this has been really, I know we're at time now. Unfortunately, I know we could keep going.
I know.
You're super busy. So I want to thank you, Kathy, for being here. Also, everyone please check out
Oh,
the book,
thank you.
Navigating the Metaverse. Is one of the best books I've ever read,
Thank you.
probably in all of technology. So it's amazing. But Cathy, anywhere else? I know your Forbes articles are incredible, but anywhere else you want people to check you out at?
Yeah, definitely Forbes, LinkedIn, peopleofthemetaverse.com, which is a community that I'm launching soon. I'm working on a newsletter with analysis as well that be paid subscription. But yeah, I'm very looking forward to kind of continuing to share analysis, deep thoughts on the space. So
Yeah, I have one last question before you go. What kind of legacy do you want to leave behind with your work in the metaverse?
I want my girls, I've got 2 girls, to feel empowered, and I want my son to also feel like that he can be also a good man. So yeah, I think it's about creating an equal opportunity for them, and just, yeah, I think the biggest thing is I want everyone to feel welcome building this future. So
that truly aligns with our purpose. Well, Cathy, thank you so much. I enjoyed so much talking to you.
thank you. Bye.